Well, good morning. Welcome back to Tail 3 Cabin. So I've had my pickup truck now for close to a month. We've been on the road with it most of that time, and I wanted to do a little video about the Pro Power Onboard. So there's several iterations that have a 9600 watt generator. So basically the Ford Lightning has a large portable power supply, very large. And that's really all it is. It runs off the battery. It generates 9600 watts of power. When it starts getting too low, it'll cut itself off, so it's not going to deplete your whole battery. Next is a hybrid motor on the Ford F-150. The hybrid motor can come with a 7200 watt generator or a 2400 watt. The 2400 watt is standard. 7200 watt runs off the battery also. The hybrid motor does have a battery built into the truck. And when that battery starts getting low, the gas engine on that truck kicks in, keeps the generator going, and starts charging the battery again. Once that battery is charged to a certain point, the engine shuts off, and it just repeats itself for as long as you're going to be using that generator. Now, probably the most common and misconceived Pro Power Onboard generator is the 2000 watt that comes as an option with most of the F-150s and your Super Duties. So we're going to talk about the Pro Power Onboard. It's 2000 watts, and what does that give you actually? Is it 2000 watts peak? Is there a peak wattage of 3000 and it's a running wattage of 2000? And how exactly is that all set up here on the truck? Exactly what are the components of it? What does it take to get you to get 2000 watts? And is it worth it? So let's go over the components first of all. If you click on that little box and say that you want the 2000 watt Pro Power Onboard, you're going to need a couple additions to your truck if you don't already have it on there. You're going to have 2 lead acid batteries underneath the hood. If you do not have 2, you're going to have to add one. Also under the hood, checking that box, you're going to get 2 alternators. You're going to get a standard alternator that runs your truck. That's going to be upgraded to 250 amps. And then you're going to have a second alternator, which is specifically designed for the Pro Power Onboard system. That alternator is 24 volts. It's 24 volts and 150 amps. The standard alternator that will be coming with the truck, the 250 amp, that is 12 volts. The 24 volt alternator is specifically just for the Pro Power Onboard. From there, underneath the back seat, you're going to find 2 other components that's going to be part of this Pro Power Onboard system. It's hidden underneath the seat area. You'll have to forgive me, we do have our dog with us and we have her little setup back here, but I've temporarily moved it out of the way. And right here on both sides are some of the components for the generator. On this side, you'll see it even has a little battery diagram on top of it. But this is where the 2 small 7.5 amp hour AGM batteries are located. And then over here is where the inverter itself is located. The 2000 watt, it's a 24 volt input. And this is where the power is disseminated to an outlet back here, an outlet out by the dash, and an outlet in the bed of the pickup truck. So AGM batteries, let's talk about those really quick. How long are those going to last? Well, typically if you take care of an AGM battery, you should be able to get about 7 years out of one. So what happens when this needs to be replaced? Well, I looked these up and they're about $60 a piece. They are wired in series. So they're 2 12 volt batteries wired in series, so that is going to give it 24 volts, and that's going to double the amperage, so 24 volts at 15 amp hours of battery power here. This is not to run this inverter while the engine is off. The engine is still going to have to run for you to use this power generator. The purpose of those batteries is to get hooked into your inverter, a 2000 watt inverter that resides right next door underneath the seats. But those 2 AGM batteries are designed to act as a capacitor going into the inverter to kind of smooth out the power coming off of that alternator, because you may be at a higher idle, you might be revving the engine, you might be going down a freeway at 70 miles per hour. So those batteries are just designed to take a little bit of a buffer of the power coming off the alternator, and then it sends a clean, constant, steady power into the inverter. Now these 2 components, as I said, are in the back seat. It does take up a little bit of area back there if you do check that box. I still have the folding storage because I have the crew cab, the full 4-door crew cab. Typically, if you just went with the 400 watt inverter, you would only take up one side of your back seat underneath the storage. But this is going to take up a portion that's probably about 10 inches wide, and it goes the whole length of your back seat back there. So now I tried to look up the actual inverter itself, and I did find that it is specifically just made for Ford Motor Company part. It's just is a 2000 watt inverter. I tried to look up the company that manufactures it, and it doesn't give too much information on what exactly the capabilities of the inverter is. It basically just says that it is a 24 volt input inverter, and it is capable of outputting 2000 watts. And it still does not spell out exactly if that's peak wattage or not. So we're gonna have to do a few experiments here and test out this inverter and see exactly what it's gonna put out. Will it take short bursts of say 2500 watts or better and still function without being overloaded? Will it be able to run continuous 2000 watts and not overload? All right, so let's just start off with the basic generator here. So I'm going to go to Pro Power on Board. You'll see that I am in the 400 watts, and let's just see for the heck of it. Okay, so I'm getting 125 volts coming out of it, and let's check and see if that's a pure sine wave or not. So this 400 watt inverter, if you can see, is a pure sine wave. My previous truck, the 2015, the inverter had a 400 watt inverter under the back seat, and that was not a pure sine wave. So this is good for electronics. Let's go ahead and put it in generator mode now. I don't know if you could hear, but the idle went up a little bit. We're now idling around 1000 RPMs. We still have a pure sine wave. Okay, you'll see that a little indicator light is on here showing that there is power to these two outlets back here. And again, pure sine wave. All right, I'm gonna do a little test here. I got my power station on AC. I'm gonna see what the startup wattage is of the circular saw and what the running watt is, and then we'll compare that to the generator on the pickup truck. All right, so this peaked out at about 1648 for startup wattage, not under any type of stress or anything like that. And then it settled down to around 900 watts. So this should have no problem on the 2000 watts of the pickup truck. Let's go try it out. Okay, I did notice the RPMs go up on the truck. You could probably hear it a little bit more now. This did seem like it was a little bit slower start compared to my power station in there, which is designed to handle higher wattages, but this still should have handled this no problem. Next thing I'm going to do here is I have a space heater, so I'm going to plug this in, see how many watts it draws. On high, I'm assuming it would draw about 1500 watts. On the lower setting, we'll see what that is, and I'll see if I can start the circular saw at the same time. Okay, so I have it on the low setting. Let's see how many watts we're pulling. So the power draw is 540 watts right now. So let's see if we can go above that peak of 2000. All right, circular saw, and we'll give it a try. We're pulling 500 watts here. This peaks at 1600 watts, so this will tell me if there's more peak voltage on this inverter mounted underneath the seat, or if 2000 is just a max. So that worked. Actually, I was surprised. I thought it would cut out, but it's still going. Right now, this heater is pulling 720 watts. I'm going to stick it on high. Let me go check, see how many watts it's pulling. So now we're up around 1200, 1300 watts with this heater, and I'm assuming when I pull this trigger, it's going to shut everything down. No, I'm actually a little bit surprised compared to some of the things I heard on the forums. I heard a lot of people saying that 1500 watts was the maximum they were getting out of their generator. All right, just to confirm here, I'm going to get a readout with the combination of heater and circular saw. Again, right now the heater is on. It is on high. It's shown here that it is pulling 1420 watts. And then I'm going to pull the trigger here on the circular saw. And let's see if we peak out. All right, so that tripped my AC. All right, so that tripped my AC power. I did see it peak out at 2200 watts. Let me try that again. So it did peak out at about 2200 watts when I pulled the trigger here, but I'm assuming it's a matter of catching it at the right moment. So let's give it another try. All right, so I saw 2800 watts show up there just before it went out. To be honest with you, I am a bit surprised that that power station tripped before this Pro Power Onboard did, which leads me to believe that maybe they changed the inverter or the inverter specs changed on this. It still is a 2000 watt inverter, but maybe it has a peak wattage of 3000 watts. As I said, I saw 2884 on my power station before that got clipped off and overloaded. But this did not overload. If we're adding things up, the heater's pulling 1400 watts approximately, and the running speed of the saw is around 900, and it continued to run. Now I did notice the saw started up slower. Just a side note, I am almost wondering if the inverter itself inside the truck is lowering the voltage when it has such a high demand like that, but keeping the amps the same. A lot of portable power stations have that feature that you can turn on and off compared to the first time when I tried it all by itself. That is good to know for if you're going to have an RV and you're going to try to put a soft start on it and you want to try to run an air conditioner. But what is the practicality of having this Pro Power on board? Okay, I got the Pro Power on board again. If I hit the green button here, it should turn on the generator. You hear the idle go up a little bit. And then this yellow light came on. So that has turned on the generator without having to go inside the cab of the vehicle. Now, I've got a heat gun here. And let's just see what the wattage of this is. All right, so I'm going to start off on low. You can hear the idle of the truck go up a little bit. And the heat gun is showing 650 watts. So let's see if we can bring, okay, so I'm going to bring our space heater back out. I'm going to turn that on low, see what we got going. All right, so we're hovering right around 1200 watts. And now let's put the heater on high. So this should, there was a slight little pause in the heat gun, but that's still going. There's still heat coming out of here. Let's see what the wattage is. Up, and I just tripped. So power on board, plug exceeded system maximum capacity. Try unplugging one or more items or reset to see details. I'm gonna turn it back on. So I turned it back on with the switch. It's reset itself. And I'm going to see what the heat gun does on high here. So the heat gun on high is at a little over 1200 watts. And I am just going to turn the heater on low. Turn that on low. Nice and warm coming out. Heat coming out of the heater. Hovering right around 2000 watts. Still going, still going. Okay, and reset. So I've learned that you really can't demand much more than the 2000 watts, or you can't hover around that 2000 watt area. I will do some testing in the future. I tried to plug an outlet tester into the rear outlet of the pickup truck, and this is the message I got. So I was trying to see what type of ground it had, if there was issues when you plugged it in, and I tried that 3 times and got the same message each time. All right, I want to do a little bit more testing because on the forums, a lot of people said that they can only hover around 1600 watts. If they go over that, the Pro Power Onboard trips. With the plug-in appliances that I have, it's a little bit difficult to try to dial in exactly how much wattage you want to pull out of this generator. So I hooked up one of my power stations. It's the EcoFlow power station, and you are able to charge it via the AC plug, and you can also select the amount of wattage you want to go into that power station. So I have a blow dryer on right now on high, and that's giving me a little over 1300 watts. And now I'm charging the EcoFlow power station. If you can look on the app, you might barely see it, but right now it's charging it at a little over 600 watts. Right now we're hovering around 1600 watts. And I'm going to inch this up a little by little, adding more wattage to it, which is going to be charging my power station. And I can max out about 880 watts going into the power station itself. and I'll keep it here for a period of time just so it's not like a fluke. So I'm hovering at 1600 watts. I'll keep it here for a few minutes and then I'll move up a little bit. I'll move up a little bit higher and keep on going. All right, around 1750, and my goal is to get to around 1900 because we know before that it tripped just around 1950. Okay, I'm at the maximum amount that I can charge my power station, so it can't go any higher, but I've been sitting here at around 1830, 1820 for about 4 or 5 minutes with no issues. So you can flirt with being close to 2000 watts for a period of time, but if you should jump over that just slightly, it's going to cut you off and overload. A question that I have, and I have not been able to get much information on this at all, and maybe some of you folks out there, maybe some Ford experts or some of you might have thought of this, but this is a 2000 watt inverter, so it's going to need 2000 watts maximum power to come in for it to use its full capacity. But the alternator, if it is 150 amps and it's a 24 volt alternator, if you multiply the volts times the amps, that gives you 3600 watts capability coming out of that alternator. So if this is capable of 3600 watts, is it possible to increase the size of this inverter? So if it's a 2000 watt inverter, could you put a 3000 watt inverter? And I know you really don't want to tax an alternator to its full capacity because you just burn it up much quicker. But to me, the 2000 watts coming off of this inverter, and we'll get into it in a little bit here, seems like if you want it to really have good functionality, specifically if you want to run an RV air conditioner, or if you want to run 2 power tools at the same time. So if anybody out there has thought about this, now I know that there's going to be communications going between here and the screen up front telling you what your wattage output is, and so you just could not drop another inverter in here without having some sort of interface that would talk to the truck itself. So through the testing that I've done, it seems like this inverter peaks out at 2000 watts. So the true running watts is going to be less than that. And from what I can gather, just using the simple test back here, that its running wattage is somewhere around 1600 watts. Now that's what a lot of folks on the forums were saying, but it appears that if you do not go over 2000, that you can flirt with that 1900, 1950 mark for a long period of time. So if you're a person that wants to take this and run your air conditioner RV, it's not going to do it. Even if you put a soft start on there, it's still not going to do it. If you had the 2400 watt system with a soft start, I think you could do it, but I think it would be close. I would not want to take a chance on it. Let's say you're leaving your pet in the RV and you're running it off of your truck. I would not take the chance that it could possibly overload and shut itself down. So who's this system good for? I think it's more economical if you were to buy a 2400 watt generator and maybe that generator peaks out at 3000 watts. It would be manageable to carry. You would be able to use an RV air conditioner with a soft start and not have issues with it. Also, it would be more economical because you really don't want to have your truck running for hours upon hours idling, and you're going to use up a lot more gas in the truck compared to what you would use in a generator. So a generator you'd probably get by with a gallon and last you somewhere around 8 hours, where this truck will probably go through a couple gallons in that 8-hour period. And again, it's probably not good for it to be idling like that. So is it worth to check that box? To me, I check the box because of the different situations we have. We have the cabin in Tennessee, we have the cabin in Southern Ohio, and then of course our normal home that we live in. And periodically we do have challenging times where the power does go out, and we do have backup plans for that situation. But this, to me, would be a backup to the backup plan. So if we were on the road with the RV, we were boondocking, we had a string of rainy days, and I wanted to charge up the lithium iron phosphate battery, I would have no issues with using my truck and running it for an hour or so and top off that battery or bring it up to 80%. And then you'd be able to use that battery for the better part of another day. So to me, that is a great little backup. When we go out west, I usually do carry a generator with me. Of course, generators are not going to always be reliable. You might have something go wrong. I had something go wrong with 2 generators at the same time this past summer, when we had tornadoes come through and I wanted to take those generators to some family members that didn't have power. In that scenario, I dropped off a bunch of power stations to a bunch of relatives of ours, and they were using them to power their refrigerator and some lights here and there. And basically they would last a good day and a half, and then they would need to be charged up. Well, if I would have had that same problem and had this truck, I could have just drove over there, idled for an hour, charge up their power station, move on to the next place, charge up their power station, and that just would have been an extra backup to my backup. So one thing, when you do have the generator running and let's say you want to leave the vehicle but continue to have the generator run, there is a thing called utility idle mode that allows you to remove the key, lock the vehicle, and continue to have the generator run for whatever period of time you want. I do not see anything in the current Ford app that allows you to control this generator. It will give you a notification on your phone if for some reason the generator overloaded or had some sort of issue. It will notify you of that, but you can't turn it on off of the phone. You have to do either up here by the screen or use the green button down in the bed of the pickup truck. If you have the Pro Power on board, I'd love to hear your opinion of it, what you use it for, what you thought you could use it for but can't, what you think the drawbacks are, and what you think any pros are. All right, that is going to do it for today. I appreciate everybody watching. I hope you enjoy and subscribe to these videos. Click on that little bell when you want to know when a new one is coming out, and keep an eye on us. Take care, everybody.